O'Neill, you were there for
All right.
that one, so was
And that's what
Tom.
we're just saying.
Time.
I was like, holy mackerel.
We're on.
The meeting of the Somerville Planning Board for August 13th, 2025 will please come to order. Adequate notice of this meeting, as required by the Open Public Meeting Act, has been provided. A copy of the notice specifying the date, time, and location was 1, published to the Courier News, 2, posted on the bulletin board outside of Borough Hall, 3, posted to the municipal website, and 4, given to the clerk administrator. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and the decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Roll call.
Andrea Dare.
Here.
Chris Addicks.
Here.
Art Akins and Larry Cleveland are excused. Jason Kraska.
Here.
John Manilio.
Here.
Barry Van Horn, Mayor Gallagher, and Councilmember Vroom are also excused. Chairperson Warner.
Here. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to approve minutes from July 23rd.
Second.
Andrea Dare.
Yes.
Chris Addicks.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
John Manilio.
Yes.
Chairperson Warner.
Yes. All right, next we have resolution for 5 Michael Lane. This was the fence.
So moved.
Andrea Dare.
Yes.
Chris Addicks.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
John Manilio.
Yes.
Chairperson Warner.
Yes. We have no hearings, so we're going to go right into discussion items. Okay. Mike, EV charging, where does that stand with what some of the comments from council?
At the last meeting, we had discussed that, and to follow up, because it was stated more than once that existing conditions are recovering surface parking lots, and I do believe that gas stations and all that were exempt by statute. So I provided what I thought was the pertinent portions of the statute to Kara, and I don't know if Kara agrees with that, or I think we're good with what's been written, with the exception of saying, to clarify, this is only for new parking lots or new developments, as the statute says, and it says you can't make it that a gas station needs a variance for this. You can't do it. You can't. Right. So I don't think we have to touch that. We just add a sentence in there to say where applicable or for new, something to that extent, something very minor, and I think we're good to go.
All right.
So if the board, I can work with Kara to get that one sentence in there, saying for new development, new, or as not, other than exemptions in the statute, this is what. Right, say,
Basically what it says.
if it's not exempt by statute, these are the rules. So we could certainly say it's one sentence
Okay.
to clarify that. If the board show and close, well, I can make that change with Kara and get that to the council for recommendation.
Okay, and so it's already been introduced at council, correct? We're just taking some of their comments and readjusting?
The council asked us.
It was introduced, correct? Okay.
Yeah, the council asked us to tweak it or
Yep.
relook at the gas stations and to address the issue. Are we picking or omitting things? And I think the stuff we're omitting is stuff that we can't touch by statute, by
So
regulation.
since it's already introduced to council, we're just advised of possible tweaks. Do we have to re-vote to have those comments sent back, or what are your thoughts?
Well, so they introduced, they sent it to us, we're reviewing, we're making comments. I would say that we want to vote to
Okay.
send it, send whatever comments back. Now, whether or not they feel that those comments are significant enough to have to reintroduce is a different story. I
Okay.
think leave that up to them. But yeah, I would do that.
All right, so then
So-
I need a motion.
I'd make a motion to,
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion to adjust to say anything that's not exempt by statute is covered under this. Some language to that extent.
Just to clarify, this is for new and it's applicable for those things that aren't exempt by the statute. Yeah.
Correct.
Got it.
I'll second.
Andrea Dare.
Yes.
Chris Addicks.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
John Manilio.
Yes.
Chairperson Warner.
Yes. All right, redevelopment plans, master plan and zoning. We have our timeline that was sent out to you guys. So just to give you an overview, there are sections in each of the timeline for each of the redevelopment plans, as well as the master plan. At the very top, you'll see concurrent with the reviews of all zoning ordinances, all zoning ordinances will be reviewed and amended if deemed necessary. So we're kind of looking at the adjusting zoning as needed is based on as in conjunction with this, because in looking at certain plans, whether it's the master plan or whether others, this is kind of just going to be part of the process. So instead of giving it a certain separate timeline, it's concurrent, all right? Just so that, but we're not missing or not, we didn't leave out the rezoning or looking at our zoning. It's just going to happen throughout the process. So we did already start off with the West Main Street because that was, council made that request already. The timeline kind of gives you an idea of when it is expected that council may review it and offer. And then from there, if that date holds, those dates would follow on how that process works. So it gives you an idea of when we will be seeing things. As and if council, it needs to be adjusted, we would adjust the timeline and we'll let you know. But this kind of gives you an idea of how we will be able to get through as much as we need to get through. And then those are the redevelopment plans. We are hoping to get through all of the redevelopment plans. And then we will also have, on the last page, you're gonna see the review and the update of the master plan. So with that, you can see next meeting is when we will begin the process. We will have all of the different areas here invited so that they, meaning historical, environmental, recreational, all of them, on those leads for each of those. I don't want to, because I don't think they're all committees, right? So all different areas for each of the different areas of the master plan will be here. We will then distribute their areas to them and talk them through of what we're looking for. I don't think our master plan is going to be as heavy of a lift as, it has been in the past, because a lot of it has been reviewed. Like, I know environmentals looked at it, historicals looked at it. So a lot of these are going to be them giving one final look, and then it'll come back to us. And then we can begin to do and review. We're looking at by mid-November to have our overall review complete, and then we'll start going into the other aspects of what we need to do. Any questions on the timeline?
Just what are the little red, what's the red in the first one there? Is the little red text here and there? Is that on yours too? Critical dates, okay,
Okay.
gotcha. Thanks, Helen.
Wasn't sure, so I wanted to make sure, yes. Cool. And like I said, if it gets adjusted, we'll get you guys new and update. Because obviously it's affluent, but it gives you an idea of how we can get all these done without just doing one at a time. All right? All right. Last but not least, improvements coverage subcommittee and residential zone conversion kind of go together. Mike, John, either one of you can take the lead on this.
All right, John's looking at me, so. To address the concern was that conversions from professional offices, which seem to be there doesn't seem to be a lot of demand. The demand seems to be more residential. So what the borough's been seeing is a lot of applications going from mixed use or professional offices back to residential. So in that case, the ordinance has been saying that's a change of use. If it's a change of use, the ordinance says you have to meet the existing bulk standards. If you don't, there's some type of board action required, typically from Board of Adjustment. The red here, the 3 points, would exempt, it would say they're not a change of use, therefore it would not require a board action. And John's email today said, and I agree with John, that on C, the conversion of mixed-use buildings to a two-family, John is suggesting that it should be a single-use building. If you have a professional office building, not necessarily if you want to take the whole professional office building and convert it to a two-family, it should be exempt. So that C should be tweaked, should the board agree with that, to go from a mixed-use to a professional office / mixed-use building to cover that. And as we were briefly discussing, the only downside to this is if you have a 20-car parking lot in the backyard because it was a professional office and now it's a two-family, that there's no mechanism, and I think the thought was, and for to weigh in, that will organically work itself out. Under, family moves in, they say to the landlord or the owner, I don't have any place for green, for the kids to play, that they would address that at that time, as opposed to having a board action. So that's the only downside I see from this, is the big parking lots that some of these offices have would remain. Other than that, the building's there. We're not talking about additions, we're talking about just the building, changing the use of an existing structure.
And I think this addresses some of the issues that we've seen in the POR is, to your point, organically it will happen, but it allows them to move forward with what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then they can address those things separately through the borough, but they have their COs, they're able to do what they need to do to get into this home. Because we don't want to continue to penalize them for doing something that we feel is a benefit to the borough, as if it's not going to be used as professional, let's get it back to a residential and have a nice family be able to enjoy that without having penalties associated with that. And when I say penalties, they're in almost a never-ending loop of how do we satisfy this without spending all this money to tear up a parking lot or dig up stone just to put grass in when it was already a pre-existing. Like, it's been that way. They're not adding to a condition that's already there. The condition is already there. So I think that this does a really good job of addressing that and allows either residents who are already residents of Somerville buying some of these properties, and or somebody who's new coming in and adding some wonderful, beautiful residential, single-family and multifamily homes to it.
Yeah, I think it's the simplest way of addressing the issue.
Yeah.
Just not make it a change of use. The ordinance is brilliant. However, getting caught up on the pre-existing conditions, this would just take it off the table. Now, if you're doing an addition, something else, of course, but if you're
Again,
just
to your
taking the
point,
building,
that
right.
becomes separate, but at
Right.
least they have that base of that they're not already starting off behind the 8 ball.
Right.
One question, I think I know the answer, right, but, I think the answer is because you've referenced in A and C, the specific districts we're talking about, and you already know that they're, permitted. But in B, we say, as long as the single or two-family dwelling is permitted in the zone district. Should we put that on both of them, or you already know that whatever the change is already allowed, so there's no need to make that reference?
Yeah, I already know that.
I figured that was it,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, okay.
All right. Any questions or comments on this?
I have a question.
Yes.
I had asked Mike, but then he told me that you guys had discussed, and I'm probably asking a question you just answered.
Nope, it's fine.
So, I'm just trying to figure it out. So, why couldn't we use, and like I said, you probably just answered it because of people not being held back, the R2 standard for setback and impervious coverage, but that probably just,
So it does, in some of those, doing these conversions actually requires them to they'd have to meet those bulk standards. And we're seeing that as more of, as a hindrance, where people are like, I don't want it, because they have to go before the zoning board and all of those costs associated with it when it's already an existing. So it's,
Because they can only get better.
yeah.
They can only improve where it is for the impervious coverage.
Yeah,
They can't make it any worse, or they would have to go back.
The concern, I think, would be if you hook it to any bulk standard, there's going to be some example where it doesn't comply. So if you hook it to any bulk standard on an existing structure, in some scenarios, you end up in front of the board by hooking it. This doesn't hook it. It says that structure, where it is fine for a 1 and 2 family, essentially. That's what it says. It takes the bulk standards out of the equation, because the concern is that it's an undue burden for something that physically isn't being changed.
Modified.
So I think we can look at the bulk standards on new developments, which you suggest, and look at R3. So I think we're going to look at the standards for all the different zone districts down the road. But for the conversions back to, and John said this a few months ago, John said less intense use. And I think if we're going from a less intense use and the structure's not changing, other than the parking lot, what is an application in front of the board accomplishing? they're not proposing anything, that the building's there. They're gonna come in and say, I want relief from the side yard setback. We're not doing anything, so the question is, why are we requesting that relief? Just take the change of use off, and then this one issue goes away. We can still look at the bulk, I understand what you're saying. You're saying, let's look at the R3, let's look at these bulk standards, and we will.
Yes.
But on this case, all we're talking about is converting existing structures back to a less intense use and trying to make it a lot less, no board action. Yes, but that's all we're doing here. And no, we're not touching additions, we're not touching anything other than the existing
The
structure.
zoning board's not gonna, and I don't wanna speak for the zoning board, but I don't see them denying somebody
No.
pre-existing.
No.
So it's just wasting time, money, and delaying the process.
Right. The question is, if the building's there, they're not proposing it, it's a C variance, let's say it's a side yard setback. What's the board gonna do? It's there. They're not proposing anything, all right? I mean, I've heard it on the board, for the benefit of you two, we have a board of adjustment member here, and I'm on the board, so I work with the board. I'm not on the board, I work for the board. Anyhow, the board feels frustration being, if nothing's changing, why are we reviewing this? That's just the frustration. So this would address that. The board wouldn't be seeing these applications if it's a less intense use. To steal John's
Does that
thunder
help?
is what John said.
It does, it does. But could they eventually?
No,
Oh, yeah,
they can do whatever they
Oh,
want.
yes, they can, once they are done, they probably will. I can see some of these, if they have a whole parking lot, they're like, well, I would like some grass for my, and then, yes, they can still do it,
Yeah.
but then it becomes separate. They're not, it's not tied to them actually, being there and purchasing. And we, thinking about, with us as a board, our philosophy is, we don't want, we want to have, we want to encourage a less intense use versus discourage. And right now, we're hearing more discouragement because of this. So this at least encourages the process to understand that, hey, you don't have to. It's not mandated if you want to change this from, a professional use into a single family or a multifamily. You won't be tied to that. And then they can decide on their own that maybe later down the line when they, now we're going to start a family, we would like some grass, then they can deal with that separately with the borough.
Okay.
So if the board's good with these recommendations, then I would just write an email, copy Kara to Kevin saying, these are the recommendations from the planning board for the council consideration. That would be the process.
Yeah, we're going to need a vote on this.
So I'll make a motion to move this and send it up for recommendation to the council.
I'll second.
And that's with that one revision.
Yes, with the
One
one
revision stating in
Yeah.
C that it's mixed use and professional office building, / just to clarify John's point that it includes that application too.
And does it have to be both, mixed
Yes.
use and professional?
You can be and
And
or.
or.
I
And
just,
or.
We say or,
and or, okay, mixed use,
And/or professional.
and that would cover those facets.
Yep.
I'll update my, my motion to that. And to add in and/or professional use and
Yeah.
mixed use.
Andrea Dare,
Yes.
Chris Addicks.
Yes.
Jason Kraska.
Yes.
John Manilio.
Yes.
Chairperson Warner.
Yes. With that, we have no ARB, I have no open other comments. I will open up the meeting to the public for any comments or questions. Hearing none, we will close public session, and I would like a motion for adjourn.
I make a motion, we adjourn?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?